Here comes the sun, doo-doo-doo-doo. Here comes the sun, and I say it's all right.
Hello, and welcome to Fortitude. I am your host, Heather Kittleson, and to my left here, I have my husband, Amos.
Hi.
And across the table, I have Sara Kindvall with me today.
Hello.
Hi, Sara. We are thrilled to have you here today to discuss a very, very tough subject. I go back to how you and I met, and we were just kind of talking about that, and I giggle a little bit because Amos and I were out for our anniversary, and we were at the steakhouse in Brandon, and this sweet lady was waiting in line, and she had like these really cool boots on, and I commented on her boots. And then Amos and I were eating, and she approached us probably 30 minutes later while she was waiting for her husband to come out of the bathroom. And as we started talking, she shared that her husband's in recovery. And then she started sharing more about her story, and I was kind of blown away. I'm like, okay, God, there is a reason she had these super stellar boots on that I went out of my way to comment, because here we are, a year and a half later-ish, and the person she said you have to contact and talk to is my dear friend, Sara. I think you're friends with her daughter?
Yes, she's one of my closest, dearest friends. She's a part of this story.
Oh, man. So when she said, I think we started talking about the podcast, and she simply just said, you need to speak to Sara Kindvall and hear her story and have her on your podcast. So I think I immediately that night sent you an instant message on Facebook, and here we are. Like, that is so fun. And for our audience, Sara is a Spitfire, and people tend to call me a Spitfire. So getting the two of us together and talking is so much fun. So this friendship that's developed over a pair of boots is really cool. I just love it. So thank you for agreeing to speak to our audience and to just be here with us today, because I find your story to be very powerful, and it has crossed my path many times in the community. And just sharing it today is going to be so special.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome, Sara. I jump in with allowing you to introduce you. There's no one that knows you better than you. So if you can just start a little bit of whatever you want to share.
All right. Well, like you said, my name is Sara Kindvall. I grew up around here in small town, South Dakota, actually in Brandon, where you met this wonderful lady. And, you know, I have two parents that are still married today, and that is kind of odd nowadays. But I have one older brother and lived a pretty normal, what was normal to me, childhood, and went to tech school and moved away to pursue my graphic design career. I moved away to Minneapolis. And in the meantime, I'll get into it a little bit more, but I found alcohol in that young part of my life. So I'll get into that. I am now I'm just going to fast forward to where I am now.
Yeah.
And then we'll fill in the gaps. I am a single mom of two, 10 and 5-year-olds, both girls. And I work for a nonprofit in the domestic violence field. I'm a coach and a speaker. I love sharing what I believe will help others, I guess, find hope and find themselves, as I've been in my journey to do the same.
Yeah, we all tend to get a little bit lost, which leads us to now sharing those stories of when and where and what transpired in those moments, right? So thank you for sharing that. Would you go back a little bit to, because the alcohol piece, obviously, we have in common. And so when did that happen? And then when did you realize that it had become an issue?
Sure. I took my first drink at 15 in high school. I don't know, being out in small town and in the country area. There wasn't a lot to do, I guess. And I don't even know if I fell into peer pressure, if I was looking for it. It was there, and I took the opportunity, and I loved the reaction, or I loved how my body reacted at the time to I love what it did to me.
Mm-hmm.
It gave me courage. It gave me the ability to talk to anyone and everyone. But that quickly got me into trouble within, a couple of years. I mean, it got me into trouble with my parents a few times. It got me into trouble, underage consumption, and then a DWI at barely 19.
Oh, shoot.
So that was some scary stuff there as far as what could have happened,
Mm-hmm.
And then I moved away. I moved to Minneapolis, and that's where my drinking really took off. I started drinking by myself.
Mm-hmm.
I manipulated my way to, have people buy for me.
Yeah.
Of course, I wasn't even 21 when I moved there. And I was in a relationship that, he would often find me passed out. I worked rotating shift in the printing industry, and worked, a month of first shift, month of second, month of third. And it was, that itself was crazy on the system. But then you add in the chaotic drinking I was doing. Excuse me. I became a blackout drinker within a few years. I mean, I think before I even left Sioux Falls, I was blacking out. So, I mean, that was only 5 years of drinking.
Yeah.
So I knew, and my significant other knew. He persuaded me to, he gave me ultimatums, more than one. And I finally went to a meeting in Minneapolis and in the suburbs at 23 years old.
Wow. So you're sitting in an AA meeting at age 23.
With a bunch of old white men in a church basement.
Oh, no. Oh,
Yep.
man. Not a place that you would have probably, looked into the future.
I cried for the first 2 meetings I went to and didn't want to go back, but my significant other gave me an ultimatum. And, at first I was doing it for him, and then quickly, within a few months, I would say, of me fumbling with the idea, I started, wanting sobriety for myself, because I knew I didn't want to feel that way of waking up and not knowing what I had done the night before. How did I get here? Where's my car? Who do I need to apologize to, and for what? To me, there's not much more demoralizing feeling than that. Or finding out from coworkers what I did say or do, because I did drink a lot with my coworkers after hours.
Mm-hmm.
And that was, I couldn't know myself or love myself with so many of those unknowns.
Mm-hmm.
So that was never even a part of the me at that point.
How would you characterize that, the ultimatum? Was it did it come from a good place? Did you appreciate it at the time, or?
Well, the way I remember one of them was, "You're starting to show signs of my father," and I knew he was the son of an alcoholic, and who I knew his father was in recovery, but it lived nowhere near us. And if I didn't fix it or change, then he was going to leave. So it was this fear of me being either by myself or being sober. So I had to pick the worst of 2 evils at that time initially. And like I said, until I decided it was for me to get sober. You can't get sober for anyone else but yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So it wasn't a healthy ultimatum. It was one that was rooted in fear.
Oh yeah, for sure. That, which I later realized was one of probably my first unhealthy or toxic relationship that became a pattern for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So you're in Minneapolis. You're in the church basement.
Mm-hmm.
And the sobriety piece and having people that get you like that, there is something so unique about AA, and just doesn't even matter, just race, age, any of it, like, because it doesn't discriminate. Did you find peace in that and stay sober, or what was your next move?
I did find peace in that. I found peace in the similarities, yes, and I was told early on to look at the similarities, not at the differences, and I held on to that. I feel fortunate that I found a group that was deeply rooted into the traditions and the steps and the work. That shifted over time and became a bit controlling, honestly. But I look at it now and have for a long time of that was what I needed at the time. That was absolutely, I needed the rigidity. I needed the consistency, the accountability to just to the extreme, really.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful for those people.
Interesting how you can kind of warp back there, isn't it? Like I can see, as I'm looking at Sara for the audience, like I can see you going and literally putting your butt in that seat with the people in the room. Yeah. It doesn't go away. Yeah. Those kind of monumental, the feeling, because I can go back pretty quickly to the treatment center, certain smells and certain things. But so you attend, how long did you attend there? And then how did you end up getting back here to the Sioux Falls area? Like, what was the time frame there?
Well, I was probably 5 years sober when I moved back to Sioux Falls.
Okay.
And I thought at that time, I'm never going back. Never going back, because it's small town, South Dakota. I got out of there. But when I was looking at moving back, I was going through another relationship thing, and actually we moved here together. Just due to my family was here and his was elsewhere, had moved away from there. And so I wanted to be around family then. And I think I was at a place in my recovery that I was able to just like slow down and see the importance of things. And I felt like this difference when I came back to Sioux Falls, like it just felt slower paced and more what I needed, I guess. And so I moved back here and like I said, about 5 years sober.
Okay. So you're in your late 20s at this point.
Yes.
Is what I'm guessing. Okay. So you kind of have entered we have so many different stages in life and so many different chapters in life, right?
Yes.
So you end up back in Sioux Falls and you are sober. So you're in a good place, but yet there is still something missing from Sara. Because you've expressed and you've kind of shared with me that you started to still find validation and the codependency and the stuff in relationships.
Absolutely.
Can we move into that space a little bit? Okay.
Yes.
So go ahead and explain that.
I will sort of fast forward through one relationship that I had while in recovery, and he was also in recovery, and it became very toxic, and I ignored flags, and then moved away later with him after we were married, and we had a child. And after becoming a mom, it was I was still sober, and I wasn't attending meetings, or wasn't it's active in my recovery outside of myself, right? And we moved away, and there was no like going away party. It was just kind of like almost an escape, but I just went along for the ride, so to speak. Like it was not my choice.
Okay.
I mean, I had a choice. I don't know if I had a choice, but I mean, I was married and we had a child, and this was the move we were going to make. So here we go.
Right.
And that made things spiral quickly into the negative. And after 2 years away, I left the marriage.
Okay.
For the sake of my sanity, my safety, and my child. There was no physical abuse, though looking back, I absolutely, and even at the time, I mean, shortly after, I know it was emotional, psychological, lots of manipulation, lots of belittling, lots of blame, lots of just nastiness.
Mm-hmm.
That was always a half hour later apologized for by him. And I just like kind of became the shell. That I could finally see that like, this is not okay. This is not normal. This is not what I want to be in.
Yeah.
And this is not healthy for my child. And there was some substance use happening on his end that I wasn't aware of until like right before I left. And then I knew. Then I knew it was time.
Okay. And so your little girl is about probably 3 at this point?
3, yeah.
3 years old when you guys moved back to Sioux Falls?
Yeah.
Okay, I bet your family was glad to have you back. I don't know how far you went away, but...
Quite a ways.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very similar.
Mm-hmm.
They move you away.
Yep.
Yeah.
Isolate.
They isolate you. So there's some narcissistic behavior in all of that you just spoke of, which is a whole other thing that I want to touch on a different day, different podcast or episode. But it's a very scary personality to try to, you can never reason ever.
Nope.
And then you just take and take and take the abuse until you really can't take it anymore. And then you have to do what's right for you and for your child if there's one involved. So you're back in Sioux Falls and you're safe until the next relationship.
I met the next element in the pattern.
Okay.
Perhaps. Never put it like that, but I do know I recognize a pattern now. And we'll get more into that in a bit. But, I hadn't healed. I hadn't recovered at all. I didn't even know I had anything to really heal about or over. I just knew, it was not what I wanted and it wasn't good. And I got into another relationship within, I don't know, a year or so after my marriage was over, or the divorce was final even. And well, it was, sometime in that next year, I met someone that I had known from 20 years prior. I actually met online again, and I met him again. And I kind of thought he was safe because I knew him from the past and he was very well known in the community that I knew from way back then. And I guess I put too much stock in that part and excuse me. And like any beginning, any beginning that I've ever had, it was good. It was fun. It was, he was charming. And, though I did have some flags that I again ignored, because I really confused my fears with my intuition. Like, is this just my fear because, or is this really my gut telling me that this isn't right or something's wrong, So
I want to speak to that because that is a very common, I hear that come out of everybody's mouth that has gone through something like this. And that is, I saw the flags. I felt the flags. I literally felt the physical. I felt my body like doing things, and it was their body trying to protect them. It was like the things that we feel, the things that we think, and the flags that are so in our face, but we try to ignore them. Golly, just trying to, anyone who's listening to this and may feel those feelings, it's like, get out. I can't stress that enough. If you are feeling unsafe or there's things that just, you're not okay with, right? Like, do whatever you can to get out because you're feeling those feelings for a reason.
Trust the feeling.
Trust them.
Yes.
Trust your intuition. Trust the Holy Spirit that is speaking inside you and saying, please, for the sake of yourself, your safety, your children, for whatever it is, you need to get out.
Right.
Because if you would have trusted, you wouldn't have entered into the next piece of the puzzle.
Right.
Right.
And I appreciate you sharing that. And I wasn't even at this place that I know now where I'm in tune with listening and feeling these things in my body, like physical feelings. They were more just so surface level or thought, like fear, or just question, or
did that really happen? You ask yourself those.
Yeah. And a lot of it was it was love bombing. I don't know if you've heard that term, but just a lot of attention and charm. And, later that turned into not a good thing, but I thought, this is, at first it's like attention. This is affection. This is what I'm seeking. This is what I want. Like he's really into me, even though I'm having these other thoughts or fears or red flags or insecurities of, is this real, or, what is this? But I just carried on.
Is it gaslighting? Like there's the phrase gaslighting, and that's where they lead you into, and then they pull you back out and they lead you in. Like it's this weird, the manipulation piece that you're like, oh, they're actually really good. They're really nice. And then the next thing you know, they're locking you up and holding you hostage. You're like, wait a minute. Well, what did I do?
Right.
I must have done something wrong. I must have done something really bad. But in reality, it is just the abuse that's going on that we try to justify it in our heads. And the reality is that it's actually happening, and it's not okay. Yeah.
Right. That love bombing is a form of gaslighting.
Yes.
And when I connected those two, I was like, wow, yeah, that makes sense. Because they make you feel worthy. They make you feel all these things, and then, kind of pull the carpet out from underneath you and like, I'm all you can get.
Yeah.
Like nobody else wants you.
Yes.
You're flawed, you're this, you're that, all these things. And those things came later, but not much later. This progressed very quickly. And that was one of the things that I ignored was moving very quickly. And now that's a sign. That's a sign of a unhealthy or toxic relationship, is this intensity.
So were you two living with each other?
We were.
Okay.
Yep, that happened quickly.
Yep. And that's usually another thing that happens is they will ask you to either move in with you or want you to move in with them, because then they have more control, which is a very, very common thing. So can we go to that day?
Yes.
Okay.
So we were not living together. Well, I'll go to that time. We had, I had ended things.
Okay.
So I'm pregnant. That changed things, of course. Actually, there was, that escalated it enhanced the possessiveness, obsessiveness, around how he was treating me. And, but I knew I started seeing signs in myself, feelings of how I did with my previous relationship, that I knew this was not healthy and I was not going to go through another one. So why would I leave the previous and then put up with this? I was just like, I can't do this. And he wouldn't leave my place. So I left my place.
Okay.
I found a new place, and we had agreed. So I thought, to be cordial adults, that we're going to have a kid, but not be together. And to the point where he even, helped me move. And, looking back, that was like, another layer of that love bombing, because the attention and the affections the attempts of it didn't stop. I had to set boundaries, and I told him of these boundaries and said, I need you to respect these. This is what I need. And he agreed. So to go to that day, he had been messaging me all morning, all day, that he needed to see me, wanted to see me. He was really struggling with things and just wanted to talk. And I had said no multiple times, and, he pulled at my heartstrings, and I fell for it and agreed to meet with him. And I met him at my place, my new place, after work, and he was there waiting for me when I got there. And my child was not there with me, so that was
Thank
good.
the Lord.
I'm 6 months pregnant at this time, and we go into my place, and he asks me a question as I let my little dog out the sliding glass door. I turn around and answered his question, and he punched me in the face and proceeded to punch me and beat me, beat my head against the ground, which was essentially linoleum on concrete. And I passed out. And when I came to, I was, in shock, and I was bleeding a lot and in a very abnormal place. And I just remember asking why and screaming, and he threatened me to shut up or it would be worse. And I thought, how much worse could this be? And I just listened and I shut up. And I'm still fighting against him, and he's a very large man compared to my size. And we wrestled, and he strangled me with his hands, his arm, his knee, shoved a blanket down my throat, and I passed out again. And because I had just moved, I was slow to unpack, and I had boxes on my kitchen table that were all of the extras in my kitchen. And because I don't cook much, extras were knives. But he was across the room and looking for, I believe, another weapon, because he was standing over that kitchen table full of boxes. And I got up and, stumbled and he tried to get me to get back here, and I made my way out the sliding glass door and ran. This felt like it was hours, but it was probably, I think, 15 minutes. But it was, to be unconscious in that period of time and to receive, I guess, the damage that I did receive, was pretty brutal. And I ran to the rental office, and no one was there, so I ran back outside, and I just fell to my knees in the grass. This was October, 6 years ago. And a woman came to my aid, and turns out she was a social worker. And she brought me into the rental office and was there with me until ambulance and authorities came. Her and I are still friends today. I spent 2 days in the hospital. There were no obvious signs of permanent damage or anything. Thankfully, as far as my head went. Mm-hmm. They did all the tests, CTs, and checked on my baby, because that was my first thought was, is she okay?
Because while you were passed out, he still did awful things.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
He did. He cut me while I was passed out, and he continued to try to cut me when I was awake, and that's when I fought. I fought him with that weapon. And there was a cut on my belly too, and that, and just the being hit so many times, and I didn't know, since I was passed out, where else did he hit me?
Right.
So I was very concerned for her. And, as far as I could tell with the tests they can do when you're pregnant, she had all good signs.
She's okay.
So I had emergency reconstructive surgery for my cut wounds. And a lot of swelling and bruising. The strangulation marks showed, and then the following days, learned what petechiae is, and that's red spotting in your eyes.
Yeah. Oxygen.
From strangulation,
Mm-hmm.
yep. And then my eyes were filled with blood too, beside, in areas where there was white, you could see the spots. In the other areas, it was pretty much filled with blood, both eyes. And, that time in having my parents and that dear friend whose mother you met, my friend showed up at the hospital, and my parents and my ex-husband, because he was in town with, he had my child. And it was gut-wrenching to see. And I, can go back there now and like see the terror in their faces. But I was okay. I survived. So now on, to the real work, the rest of the journey. Waking up that first morning in the hospital, and seeing, I don't even know if it was the next morning or sometime in the night, but seeing the headlines. Oh, I think that was probably the first time I dropped F-bombs in front of my parents, probably ever, to see the headlines, because they were brutal headlines. And I remember messaging or calling the paper or whoever it was that put that out and said, "Do you know that there's people attached to headlines, and that this will forever be attached?"
Yeah.
Though my name was not in it. And, I realized later that headline got a lot of attention, and it actually was international.
Oh, man.
People were sharing with me that this was, printed, shared with newspapers all over the world. And I was like, what?
Details?
Yeah.
Details about what happened.
Yeah. I mean, the basic details.
Oh.
Yeah. And, that was mortifying.
So more headlines hit the news because the ex is now in prison.
Mm-hmm.
So were they out? How did that all unfold, if you don't mind, just for a couple minutes sharing how the trial and did they seek after him right away?
Mm-hmm. Well, he turned himself in that night.
Oh.
Yep. So he used that to try to help his case. What I can share is the process of, having to sit in front of a grand jury and share all this in detail, like within days after it happened, was gut-wrenching. And I mean, details way more than we talked about right now.
Yeah. And you're healing. Like you're physically still brutalized, like your body.
Yeah.
Because
I still had stitches.
Yeah.
I'm still very pregnant. I was more pregnant. So that, it's traumatizing. It's a lot to deal with. And, it would go on for about a year until he was sentenced, right around, I can't remember if it was before or after. I think it was after Thanksgiving that following year. But we had reached a plea agreement, and I was had some say in it. I didn't have much. I didn't have all the say by any means. But yeah, he's going to be behind bars for a long time.
I can rightfully say good, right? Because I'm gonna.
Yeah.
Man, Sara, thank you. That is not easy to swallow. That's very hard to share that over and over. But the one thing that I absolutely love and adore about you is that you haven't taken this experience and locked it up and said, "Dang it, this happened to me," and I don't ever want to talk about it. I don't ever want to share it. It's nobody else's business. Instead, you have turned it around and you have become somebody that is so inspirational and such an impact on domestic abuse and just in general, even as your friend, like I adore so much about you and the heart that you have and the heart that you have for people and people going through this. And your daughter, man, I tell you what, that girl too, she's so beautiful. And so she doesn't even know what she has gone through. Like I'm sure she's bits and pieces of what you've shared, there's certain things we don't share for the safety and for our kids and stuff. But, in the last, I think we have like 5 to 7 minutes left. So with that, just go ahead and share. As you just have so much going on, you have so much advocacy and education, and you're coaching women back to their, so they don't have to go through this, it's so good. So just share, just go. What are you doing right now?
Well, in this last 6 years, it's, I just want to hit on the healing that I took the bull by the horns. And thank God for the services in our community that encouraged me and aided me in that. Because I feel like if I hadn't gotten counseling right away, it'd be a different story as far as where I'm at now. And even just in the last year or 2 years, how I've healed even more. So, and that all of that encouraged me to want to help others in a different way, but beyond speaking, because I've been speaking since 2018, I believe. I shared my story for the first time. And it's not fun. It's not easy, and why I do it, it helps me heal. But the goal is to help others know that they're not alone and that we can get through hard things. And whether it's alcoholism, whether it's abuse, whether it's whatever your life struggle is, use your network, use your people. And if you don't have them, reach out for help and find them. And if you're in, if you have bad playgrounds and playmates, it's time for new ones because we are a product of our environment.
Yes, we are.
And with that, I took some classes and became a coach, and I love working with women that have been through similar, but I also love working with anyone that just has questions or, wants to reach their goals and has barriers to figure out what they are. And, together we can do that. So, I'm not the crisis management person on, getting you out, but a big thing I always say is, if you're in a situation now and you're in danger, or it's in, emotional abuse can definitely escalate to physical abuse. And just because it's not physical does not mean it's not abuse. And just because it hasn't happened yet doesn't mean it might not. And strangulation, if that's happening, there's 7 times, I think is the number, don't quote me. The lethality is much, 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 much higher if strangulation is happening. So have a safe plan is my point. Use those resources in the community, build a plan to get out safely.
There's this piece about, and I will, because of now speaking out about the alcoholism, people will sit across the table from me and say, well, I like to drink, but I just don't know. Am I? And all the questions that people have, they have the answers, which is really, I tell them all the time, I'm like, I knew. I didn't want to admit it, but I would say, oh, well, it's just what we do. It's just what I know. It's just what he does. He's just, and you make the excuse piece. If you start making excuses, you have already answered your question.
Absolutely.
So from the abuse, from whether you're doing it to yourself or to the person around you is doing it to you, it's like, listen to yourself. If you think you have a problem, find somebody, a group. It does not matter. You don't need to wait until it's too late, until something really bad happens. Like I knew I was just literally one more drink away from either me dying, one of our kids getting hurt, or somebody else, because it becomes insanity. And so you start doing things that you actually don't even realize that you're doing them because you're just so far gone. And I think that comes also from the side of like the mental health and people. Like if you're starting to see some weird activity, don't question yourself anymore. Don't make excuses. Like find some help.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
As I was looking up some stuff about domestic abuse and domestic violence, Amos and I always joke that I never dated anybody prior to him, but that's kind of a lie. So we kind of joke, but I dated a cop right out of college, and literally 90% of the phone calls that he would get that he would have to go to was domestic violence calls. And that hasn't changed. Like it is, looking through all of this stuff, 81% of women who have experienced, like there's stalking involved. There's so many things that lead up to this abuse. So just for people that are listening, there's so much more that's going to come out episode after episode, but this is just the beginning of advocating and educating people of what is out there. And even if you've gone through things, like you are just a product of such a beautiful, like God is doing so much awesome work through you, and you're allowing him to do that. And through that process, you're healing, and you're the next person that you're with. I don't even know if you're dating any, but anyway, it doesn't matter. They're in for a treat because there's a confidence and a beauty about you now that you're not going to stand for no crap. Like it is, and it's a beautiful thing because it's not like hardened walls and shut off, like don't mess with me. It's I've stepped into who I am.
Absolutely.
And I am Sara, and I love me because that's all the work that you've done. And I think that where we go wrong is we're searching for who we are, and we find our validation, we find our identity in others. Right?
Absolutely.
Like, that's where it comes from.
That's the big key here for me is, I am no longer, the opinions of others no longer run my life. How I think you think of me, though your feedback might be important. When I bring something to you, your opinion of me, or my past or my future is really none of my business.
Yeah.
And I have come to this place in my life where I know me. I'm still getting to know me, and I love it. And one of my biggest revelations in putting it into words is we are not defined by our coupleness or being partnered. And I think that narrative really needs to change with even asking kids like, oh, do you have a boyfriend? Do you have a girlfriend? Like society as a whole is wiring our youth, young adults, everyone to think their worth is dependent upon, even if a minuscule, and it might seem so innocent, but just think about those things. Like it sets such a different narrative for our youth, and those things need to change.
You're coming back, and we're going to have a whole episode on that, Sara, because yes.
Yeah, love it.
Oh, thank you. This is, I really could go on and on.
Thank you for sharing your lives with us. I am just so honored to be here and to, help with your stories as well.
You're partnering with us on changing lives and making this world better. So thank you, Sara.
Thank you.
You are a shining star, girl. All right. Well, thank you, and have a great day, everyone.